Well, thank you, Christine, and Dr. Panesi, and Vince. And as mentioned earlier, I've been a Mountie for roughly 15 years. And as a Mountie, I always felt it was very important that I know what my legal authorities are and that police officers should know exactly what authority they have to do what they do. I spent a fair amount of time researching the different legislation surrounding what we're currently dealing with. And two things that I've thought I'd like to mention that stood out to me when reviewing the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act in Ontario and the Federal Emergencies Act is that both of those very early on in the legislation have subsections that detail how both are subject to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And I would like to just read the paragraph 3 of the Emergencies Act to you. Whereas the Governor and Council, in taking such special temporary measures, would be subject to the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Canadian Bill of Rights, and must have regard to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, particularly with respect to those fundamental rights that are not to be limited or abridged, even in a national emergency. Throughout my career and my training, everything we do has to be guided by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, whether it is involving investigation or even a lawful arrest, which can lead to use of force. If we wander outside the boundaries of the Charter, we can lose a case, even a very serious one, such as a homicide, or we can get ourselves into some real trouble if we use force on someone and it's not justified under the Charter. The Charter guarantees our rights and freedoms, the most fundamental, and it is subject only to reasonable limits prescribed by law as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. I recently heard former Premier of Newfoundland, Brian Peckford, say very clearly that they have failed to demonstrably justify their infringements on our fundamental freedoms. The fundamental freedoms include conscience and religion, thought, belief, opinion, and expression, peaceful assembly and association. There's many, but I'll hit on the key ones that I think are germane to the current situation. Our mobility rights, where every citizen has the right to enter, remain in, and leave Canada. Our legal rights, everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person, and the right not to be deprived thereof, except in accordance with the principles of fundamental justice. Section 8, everyone has the right to be secure against unreasonable search or seizure. That's a big one in the police world. And when I read that, I can't help but think of people who are not even law enforcement demanding your private medical information at the door of a hockey rink. What legal authority do they have to demand that information from you? Everyone has the right not to be arbitrarily detained or imprisoned. So when I read about the secure isolation facility in North Battleford, Saskatchewan, that was very concerning to me. Detailed about how it is meant for people who willfully do not abide by their quarantine when they are deemed contagious. But very little detail as to what and who is making the decision about who is contagious. Is it someone who's actually sick and symptomatic? Or is it someone who's completely asymptomatic with a positive test? I wasn't able to find that.
Every individual is equal before and under the law.
It has the right to equal protection and equal benefit of the law without discrimination. And finally, the most important in my mind is Section 52, where it clearly states that the Constitution I can't look at you, Piper. Is the supreme law of Canada.
like to read my oath of office that I took 15 years ago. I, Daniel Bulford, solemnly swear that I will faithfully, diligently, and impartially execute and perform the duties required of me as a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and will well and truly obey and perform all lawful orders and instructions that I receive as such, without fear, favor, or affection of or toward any person, so help me God. I cannot be compliant or complicit with federal policies and provincial regulations that I sincerely believe to be unlawful by every measure. It is certainly not the case that the official narrative has demonstrably justified a gigantic overreach into the fundamental freedoms of every citizen of this country. Drawn my line in the sand. No more silence and compliance for me.